I, Sayyid Muhammad Misam, along with my co-host,
Zubia Arif.
feel privileged to welcome you at the first sub-session of Session 3 of the International Maritime Conference, which is being convened to deliberate on the subject of embracing blue economy, challenges and opportunities for developing countries.
The theme selected for deliberation in this session is Impact of Climate Change on the Marine Environment. Dear guests, we are pleased to welcome all the participants, some of whom have traveled a long distance to show their solidarity with the maritime community of Pakistan, and some scholars have joined us online and have given their valuable time for sharing experiences and suggestions to address maritime issues in the Indian Ocean region.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have Commodore retired Sayyid Muhammad Ubaidullah 𝐶𝐸 𝐬𝐻𝐼𝐻 Military as the moderator for this session. Commodore Ubaidullah has over 36 years of meritorious naval service to his credit, receiving many prizes and awards, including the coveted Sword of Honor and the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Committee of Pakistan Gold Medal. He established the Pakistan Marines in the Navy and remained as its pioneer commandant for the first 3 years. He has also established a first-of-its-kind research center in the maritime sector of Pakistan, namely the National Center of Maritime Policy Research. Ladies and gentlemen, may I invite Commodore retired Sayyid Muhammad Ubaidullah 𝐶𝐸 𝐬𝐻𝐼𝐻 Military for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Distinguished guests, honorable speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we are privileged to have with us as chief guest Senator Shari Rehman, who is Pakistan Federal Minister of Climate Change. She, as a fourth-term parliamentarian, a diplomat, a journalist, and civil society activist, she has received Pakistan's highest civil award, Nishan-e-Imtiyaz. She is also founding chair of Senate Parliamentary Caucus on Climate Change and has served as chair of Pakistan Red Crescent. Senator Shari Rehman currently features ranked the Financial Times list of the 25 most influential women of 2022. And she also features in the Forbes 50 list of women achieved for 2023. We are privileged to have Senator Shari Rehman as the chief guest. To begin with, let me say a few words in the presence of so learned a speaker around here on a subject which is very close to the heart of everyone here, outside, and throughout the world, the climate change. Climate change is having a significant impact on the world oceans and seas. Some key effects, I would just list them, which will be further dwelled upon by the relevant speakers. The first and the foremost is the rising sea levels. As the earth temperature increases, the polar and glaciers are melting and hence causing rising in the sea level. This can really lead to coastal erosion, displacement of coastal community, increased risk of flooding while this is a storm. And the second part is warmer sea oceans. As the rising temperature causes world ocean to warm, this can lead to changes in the ocean current, which has an impact on the distribution of marine species and alter food chain. Ocean acidification. As the atmosphere is receiving CO2 and the level is increasing, the sea also absorbs that much more and get more acidic, and which has a direct impact on the shelf life and coral. These cannot be maintained. At the same time, changes in the circulation, ocean circulation, changes in the temperature as well as salinity causes the circulation difference which comes into play and affects a large number of species and human being, the coastal community and elsewhere. Finally, the increased frequency of extreme weather events in the coast, the climate change can increase the frequency and intensity of extreme weather conditions such as hurricane, typhoon, willies, etc. These events can cause significant changes to the coastal community and to the people. Overall, the effect of climate change on the seas and the oceans are far-reaching and can have serious implications on marine environment, on human being and animal and resources put together. This brings me to invite my first speaker, which is a panel of two speakers, Mr. Muhammad Irfan Tariq and Mr. Muhammad Amjad, to present their paper. And before they start, let me introduce to them Mr. Muhammad, you will speak first, right? Mr. Muhammad Irfan Tariq joined Government of Pakistan in 1991 and served as Director General Environment and Climate Change in the Ministry of Climate Change. He also serves as National Focal Point on United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and has involved in the climate negotiations since the Rio Summit. Mr. Tariq also worked as member of the Executive Board of Clean Development Mechanism of UNFCCC for the last 3 years. Further, he is serving as Vice Chair of the Working Group of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. May I request the Honorable Speaker to present his paper.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Madam Minister, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it's indeed a great honor and privilege to be here today and to present before you some thoughts on issues which have not been captured so very well in our national priorities, and to create some ripples in the thinking process, to highlight some of very important issues arising because of climate change, primarily, and also environment, and also to show you an opportunity angle, because Pakistan normally has been conceived as one of the most vulnerable countries to climate change, the most impacted countries for the last 20 years. And for this purpose, ladies and gentlemen, we plan to present before you a presentation primarily in 2 or 3 parts. I would like to, the first part would be climate change impacts on oceans, and putting before you some opportunity angle. This will be a fairly shorter part. The second part is an interactive atlas, which was developed by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, a UN organization, where Pakistan played a very prominent role. This atlas would be presented by my co-presenter, Mr. Muhammad Amjad. In fact, this presentation also has a third part. And diving deep into the issue, Dr. Asif Inam would be presenting a case study based on the specific coast of Karachi. And just for the information of those who have not heard of IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it was established in the 90s, 96, 97 by United Nations Environment Program and World Meteorological Organization. And the need came out of the Rio Declaration, where there were observations regarding climate change, but it required scientific evidence. So all three, and I would also like to highlight all three of us have been part of the IPCC cycle, which is AR6, Assessment Report 6 cycle currently, and we have contributed to the whole process. So very proudly, Pakistan has played its part in the IPCC cycle. So ladies and gentlemen, coming to the impacts of climate change, for the last 2 years, you must have observed Pakistan getting one disaster after the other in the shape of forest fires, heat waves, floods, droughts, gulfs. And Pakistan has appeared on the global radar of climate-induced disasters. It was one of the opportunity which Pakistan availed, and the Honorable Minister was very ably able to get a decision on loss and damage during the last COP, for which the whole developing world community is thankful to Pakistan. And I would take this opportunity to thank you, Madam, for your excellent contribution the globe has recognized. So ladies and gentlemen, all these disasters which we saw during 2020 and 2021, they were primarily terrestrial disasters. I have put before you a list of 7 disasters which are marine-related or ocean-related disasters, but they never appeared during any media discussion or anywhere in our priorities. For example, sea level rise is happening right now. It was happening yesterday. It will happen tomorrow as well. And the basic fact is, it is irreversible. Whatever sea rise is happening, it is irreversible. Under the worst scenarios, by 2100, we are expected to have a 0.7 meter rise in our coastal line, communities, coastline, where, as we heard, approximately 1,000 kilometers of coastline, with 10% of Pakistan's population there and 40% of industry. So you can very well imagine the impacts. As was discussed by Commodore Saab very ably, there's disturbance in the water cycle. Sea intrusion and coastal erosion. Now this is something very specific to Pakistan, and allow me to take a second here. You know, disasters around the globe, there is one disaster after the other. But what we are experiencing here is a multitude of disasters taking place right at the moment. We have in the districts of Badin and 𝐓𝐷𝐻 sea intrusion, and it has not appeared on our radar as the other disasters have done so. And another very specific point to note is, as I said, they are irreversible. By the end of the century, they would not come back. Floods come and they recede. Droughts come and we try to cope with them. But sea level rise is going to remain there. Sea intrusion is going to remain there. So there are going to be disasters which have got very long-standing consequences. Just to be quick on the side, acidification is, I think, one of the most important environmental impacts we are having in our ocean. Heat waves, there have been incidences of heat waves, loss of biodiversity, and a list of climate-induced disasters. About 20 years back, we never heard of cyclones in Karachi. Now this is a recurring phenomena. We never heard of heat waves in Karachi. 2015 was the first year when we are about more than 1,000 people perished. So the point I'm trying to make, marine disasters, they are irreversible, and the most impacted are the coastal communities. They are on the front line of these disasters. And I think we have not been successful in paying attention to these disasters and addressing them. And on top of all that, ladies and gentlemen, you must have heard of the plastic intrusion into the seas. And as the UN tells us, there's going to be more plastics in the sea than the fish. And I take this opportunity again to thank the Honorable Minister for taking a lead in this. I think we expect a lot of action in the coming years in this arena. So ladies and gentlemen, these are all the disasters, and we have been trying to portray Pakistan as one of the impacted countries, but there's also an opportunity angle now, and it is in the form of our natural resource assets. So what I want you to concentrate on is the figure of 76.4 million tons of sequestration capacity. This is the assessment which we did with World Bank support. It is a published document. This is the capacity of carbon sequestration we have in our ocean. Now, this is an extremely huge natural resource, and if we keep the health of our oceans in good order, I think this would help us in addressing our national commitments, which I'm coming to next. Along with it, you would see that we have, if we our mangroves, Pakistan is again most probably the only country in the world which has grown its mangroves since 1990s to a level larger than 300%. So it's a huge achievement for Pakistan. And if we restore their capacity, they have the capacity to sequester almost 0.3 million tons. And the last figure I just want you to concentrate is the in the last line, which is $75 million, which if we tag a price to this natural asset, it would be this much. This slide, I would like you to just see the natural resources in the marine environment we have. I think this is a huge asset we have, and we need to take care of this asset. We have drawn a roadmap to address this, which is reflected here. And with this, I would thank you and request Mr. Amjad to present the interactive atlas for monitoring climate change globally and in Pakistan. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Muhammad Amjad, working as a senior scientist officer Scientific Officer at Global Climate Change Impact Studies Center. He published various research articles in national and international journals. I have a request to make, sir. Kindly take
Thank
only
you so
three,
much.
3 minutes, please. The
Yeah.
time is already up.
Thank you so much. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Uh, uh, I would like to be very quick as much as possible. So, yeah, in the IPCC 6th assessment cycle, working group 1, we as a team worked in this cycle and prepared an interactive atlas. So this interactive atlas has two parts. One is in the written part, another one is online. So you go online and you can see different results. The basic purpose of this interactive atlas, so because the assessment is a big document and it's really hard for anyone to read it. So here, with this interactive tool, different kind of audience, both academician, students, and decision makers can go online and see what different kind of results for their own particular region. So this is the outline of the entire report, and the last 3 chapters are on the regional level. So this is team from all around the world. So we've been working together to produce this. As I mentioned, we have divided the whole globe into 46 land regions and 12 ocean regions. In addition to that, there are monsoon regions, small islands, and working group 2 continental regions, and major river basins. So in all these regions, you can go and see different kind of variables, which I will show you. So this has three main components. One is the simple version, another one is the advanced version, and the third one is the regional synthesis. And other part is regarding the documentation of the atlas. So here I want to show the climatic impact drivers which been assessed in the this current assessment cycle. So this purple color shows the confidence level. So the dark purple color shows that we are very sure and this high confidence that this will going to happen. So you can see on all the coast related variables, which been sea level rise, sea surface temperature, marine heat waves, such kind of all kind of variables have a lot of confidence in all regions, and this is going to be happen in future. So here you can compare different results for different regions on one platform, and you can see the level of confidence for different variables. Here, this is the regional synthesis, and which shows which region is going to, which variables is behaving like what for what time frame. So as I mentioned, there are plenty of variables, atmospheric, oceanic, and other variables, and some derived variables like hot degree days, cold degree days, and frost days, maximum temperature, minimum. We can get all of them all together and compare with each other, by increasing the one variable, and we can see the behavior of others as well. So these all variables are for different IPCC scenarios, which are socioeconomic pathways. So the SSP 8.5 is the warmest one, and the SSP 1 okay, is the and there's a middle and low emission scenarios. So we can compare all of them for our own region and create tables. We can make some timelines. The data sets of climate model intercomparison projects, which is 6 cycle, is also here. The CMIP 5 data is also there. Codex data is there. Aphrodite data, crew data, all different kind of observed and modeled data sets are provided there, and we can see different level of warming levels for example, what the world will look like and what our region, our coastal region in Arabian Sea will look like under different warming scenarios. And not only this, we can see it for different time periods. For example, near term, medium term, and long term, and relative to different baselines. The baseline of pre-industrial and the latest baseline as well. So this is the one of the example of showing how the temperature is changing in over South Asia region in near-term basis. There are also a few regions which have been identified as the ocean biomes. So our Arabian Sea, few regions in ocean which are ecologically very active. So our Arabian Sea also falls under those regions. So that region, I have few results for that. So you can see for different months, and under the x-axis you can see the different
Mr.
years.
Amjad, may I request you kindly, please? We have already sort of shot on time.
So this is the time series, and this is sea level rise for our region, which is already mentioned by Irfan Saab, that we will be like 0.7 meters by the end of this century. This is the regional synthesis we can produce using the interactive tool, and these are different sets of variable for different regions. And if you want to do something by more yourself, there's a repository online on GitHub, so you can go there and produce different kind of results, and also the scripts are also given, so which will be very useful for the students. Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you just heard Mr. Muhammad Irfan and Mr. Muhammad Amjad. They had a lot of data. They have a lot of knowledge that they wanted to convey to all of us. But unfortunately, those timings are not available. Maybe we need to have a dedicated session with them to understand. But one thing very clearly I understood and really got scared. उन्होंने डरा दिया है कि 7 मीटर की हाइट बढ़ जाएगी. Please don't get carried away with that. वो by mistake है, that's only 0.7 meters by the turn of the century. So that's one area. But definitely Pakistan, although contributes only less than 1% of carbon emission to the Eurozone, but it is on top 10 countries of the world at number 10, which is affected by the climate change. Whether it is ocean warming, whether it is acidification, whether it is warming of this, or whether it is melting of ice and bringing floods that we have seen very recently, and we have been affected by that. I thank you very much, sir. And my next speaker is Mr. Muhammad Akhtar Cheema, who is the country representative of IUCN. He has over 20 years of experience in natural resources management and more than 15 years of experience with IUCN. He holds a bachelor degree in agriculture engineering from University of Agriculture Faisalabad and a Master of Science in Agriculture Extension from University of Reading, UK. Due to paucity of time, I'm not reading out the full biodata and the CVs. Please excuse me for that. May I invite you to please present your paper on preservation of marine ecosystem.
First of all, Honorable Madam Minister, Chair of the session today, what a pleasure to have you in this session. Honorable Ubaidullah Saab, we are very pleased that you have the responsibility of this moderation. Inam Saab, Irfan, Tariq Saab, and Amjad Saab, distinguished institutions, heads of the institutions, Pakistan Navy Chief of Naval Staff, NIMA Director General 𝐄𝐦𝐻𝐧𝐠 Saab, and the Maritime Ministry representatives. What a pleasure to have to be with you this afternoon. We are very honored to have this multiplier effect. Earlier, we used to have few delegations from international countries, several countries that we have now distinguished presence. 2 days, I have heard many of the distinguished speakers, and I think that most of the job is already done. So it will make my presentation relatively little easier if I have this control with me. I can try to finish my presentation timely. I don't know how many of you know about IUCN. IUCN is an organization that brings together 1,200 members, 16,000 scientists, and we have a distinguished presence of many of the countries that we work globally. People are in the center, and we have land, water, oceans, and climate are the priorities. But again, the areas that we address, our Nature 2030, are some of the areas that we have presence in Pakistan, Karachi, Islamabad, Quetta, Peshawar, Punjab, 𝐒𝐩𝐻𝐃. We work with multiple donors, and I'm not going to have, we have distinguished membership of the both governments and non-governmental organizations, number of donors that we work. Ladies and gentlemen, we heard that Pakistan is blessed with natural assets. We have more than 1,000 kilometers of coast, and we have 240,000 square kilometers and an area added equal to Sindh as continental shelf, relatively much less explored. And this all actually helps us to understand better, starting from mangroves to biodiversity to coastal beaches that we have are unique in Pakistan, that we are blessed with these natural assets. But at the same time, you would see that everybody mentioning about these challenges that we face. The people say much less water is coming to coast. There is acute water shortage. The people say that the mangroves are being cut. People say we are overpopulated coast. People say that there's a coastal pollution that is taking place. And people say men work and women are not given much attention in the coastal areas. So we all have discussed what can we do and what have we done. You all heard about plastic, 300 million tons, the plastic which is produced 14 million tons each year goes to sea. And Asif Inam Saab, I think he will present you more closely what is the challenge that we are facing. Pakistan mangroves, you heard many of the presenters. We had gone down to 84,000 hectares of mangroves left. But thanks to God and thanks to government of Sindh and stakeholders like Pakistan Navy for bringing this cover back. 50,000 hectares of plantation in the coastal areas has been raised by the Department of Forest Sindh in partnership with IUCN. And there is a complete record of each and every location which is available. I would like to say that we had not tapped the other stakeholders when mangroves were. Private sector, we established business and biodiversity. We had a colleague, Julian, representing Pakistan British, this business council. We have other business leaders around us. I think we need to focus on bringing them on board because they can do a lot. This million mangroves alone in Port Qasim area. And I would like to say that we have wonderful institutions like Port Qasim in here at the federal level. We also have wonderful association of other partners that work like Engro, that we have established these plantations in the other private sector. I would like to say that this partnership, especially in Balochistan with the World Bank that we have, most importantly, in I think it was 2016 or 17, when we had this opportunity of meeting Zakaullah Saab. तो वो कहते हैं बताओ, चीमा बताओ ये जो मैंग्रोव्स हैं कट रहे हैं तो क्या कर रहे हैं आप लोग? मैंने उनको बड़ी कहानी सुनाई, मैंने कहा जी हमने स्ट्रेटेजी बनाई, हमने ये किया. कहते हैं प्रैक्टिकली बताओ कितना किया. I tried, but I think I said that, you know, organization like IUCN can do that much. We prepare strategy, worked with government and demonstrated, and that needs to be upscaled. He said, okay, what can we do? I said that Pakistan Navy can come with the plantation. He said, okay, 1 million plants that Pakistan Navy is going to plant next year. And I never thought. The very next day, I received a telephone call from a Kamkar, and I did not know about the details, but people, they landed in and asked about how are you going to undertake this survey and plantations. Believe me, this 1 million plants, 2 years, 2 million. And when I presented this to Abbasi Saab, I said that now that Zakaullah Saab is retiring and this annual event that takes place, what is going to be the fate of this 1 million? He said, I go for 2 million. So this is the level of will, commitment. Today, 7.5 million plants that Pakistan Navy has raised, and you can go, even one of the staff member who I happened to meet, he said that, no, I can hide myself in the mangroves because the mangroves that we had planted have grown much. So I would like to highlight that there is a huge potential that we can capitalize, and institutions like Pakistan Navy is doing wonderful work. I would also like to say it's not only the work that they have done. Water treatment plant, again, another activity which was, we shared experiences, and in Menoda, 30,000 gallons per day that they started treating, and now at 15 locations, Madam Minister, they have replicated 450,000 gallons per day. This is a replicable, again, an intervention that Government of Pakistan and upscale in any of the housing societies, in any of the, because there were millions that were being spent on this water polluted water, and there were watering plants. I would like to say this, economic valuation of mangroves that everybody mentioned. We had undertaken this study. Dr. Amjad is there. The, $1,400 US per hectare, the benefit that they bring every year. This reversal that has, Irfan Tariq also mentioned about, we have a unique situation in which Pakistan is now witnessing reasonable increase in the vegetative cover of mangroves in Pakistan. So we have from 14,000 to 105 to 200, and this credit goes to, this is water treatment plant that I mentioned. The Pakistan Navy has done wonderful work, which I say that is going to be. Madam Minister, in your ministry, that we have this national coordinating body, which is chaired by the Secretary Ministry of Climate Change, and both provincial governments, boards, coastal development authorities, and all those relevant departments, including private sector, 26 institutions. This morning, I heard Senator Syed Amjad, he said we need to establish, we already have established since 2010. I think we need to make operational, there was not a single marine protected area. Again, credit goes to provincial governments, federal, and especially Ministry of Defense and Pakistan Navy, that we have Astola Island, one of the marine protected area, and IUCN has already undertaken those benchmark studies, which I think are much less known. And I would like to say here that Blue Economy Portal that we are going to bring this year is going to provide opportunity of having all those, coastal heroine, I also said there. Gender mainstreaming again, hundreds of the women that we have associated, and there is a huge action plan, gender action plan, the Madam Minister, where we have involved local communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we have associated not only in coastal, all over Pakistan, over 10,000 students. And I want to have meetings with 100 Vice Chancellor this year in 2023. We already have held meeting with half a dozen Vice Chancellors of the women universities already. So we will continue having further opportunities explore. I would like to say these couple of minutes that I am going to take. I think there is a huge potential. Policies that we worked, I think we need to undertake objective assessment of those policies and joint reviews. We need to come up with the gaps and then prepare an informed policy. Ministerial Coordination Forum is extremely important. I think Madam Minister has good exposure and she has the convening role. I would say that those other ministries need to be brought on board. Those institutions, especially donors, we mentioned about World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Development Bank, they all are doing work in isolation. I would suggest that we have this consortium established of the donors and then reporting to this coordinating body or the ministry so that we have this overall, the program. Finally, I would like to say the implementing agencies, the organizations, they need to be brought on board. And there are several ideas that today we have brought, but they all require actions, and these actions are listed. We cannot do alone. We need to have partnerships, sustainable development goals that we would like to have, climate smart infrastructure. These points that I have shared, I think replication and upscale of Pakistan Navy's experience is extremely important. I say gratitude to NIMA, to Pakistan Navy, and to Maritime Ministry for organizing this wonderful workshop. Madam, our Honorable Foreign Minister साहब said that's what a landmark. तो मैं अपने colleague से कह रहा था, मैंने कहा बताएं कोई सी मार्क भी कोई ऐसा लफ्ज़ है, कहते हैं इससे पहले तो नहीं, वो डिक्शनरी में तलाश कर रहे थे, तो मैंने कहा why don't we introduce what a सी मार्क conference that you have organized. Thank you very much. this wonderful opportunity that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mahmood Akhtar Cheema. What a talk coming from the heart, talking with conviction, so what he is doing, and also told us the success story of involvement of IUCN with Pakistan Navy, with Sindh government, with Balochistan government, and getting to where we got. Originally, Pakistan, as he said, was at the 4th or 5th largest mangroves in the world. But over a period of time, by cutting off the mangroves and sometime really being misused for certain other selling of this wood, and of course, those who are local, they have the right to cut those for their firewood purposes. But the success story at the end of the day was that IUCN worked with Pakistan Navy, and Pakistan Navy originally contributed to 1 million trees, sapling of the mangroves, and subsequently 2 million. So as it stands today, Pakistan Navy has added 7.6 million mangrove tree to this area, and scientifically GPS pictures and satellite pictures are available to tell us, yes, that's where it should be. And I must say, and it has been said already, that Sindh and Balochistan Forest Department, along with Maritime Security Agency, are ensuring those aspects that these are not cut and protected, and valuable contribution by them. Mr. Mahmood also mentioned the need of a joint committee or working from a center with World Bank, Asian Development Bank, Islamic Bank, etc., which is really need of the hour, and nobody else but the Madam Minister is very close to her heart, and I'm sure at the end of this seminar, on conclusion of this session, we will hear much more good things, as the government has been able to convince the world leaders to create a fund for those who are affected by the climate change, because this climate change has no boundary of rich or poor, east or west, north or south countries. Thank you very much, sir. I now invite Dr. Asif Inam, who joined the National Institute of Oceanography much earlier in 1984. But later he did his PhD from University of Wales in 1997, and he was appointed as a project director of Pakistan Continental Shelf. ये जो कॉन्टिनेंटल शेल्फ बना है 50,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर का, Dr. Inam also played a pivotal role into that, and really all hats off to him. The government of Pakistan appointed Dr. Inam as the Director General DG NIO, and he stayed there for a long time from 2015 onward, and then he retired in 2019 after serving for 35 years as the head of NIO. Sir, over to you for climate change, sea level rise, need for new urban planning for coastal cities of Pakistan. ये आप गौर से सुने, कोई पता नहीं आपका घर कहाँ हो और कितना सी राइज हो रहा हो. वो सी राइज जो है वो आपकी प्रॉपर्टी को डायरेक्टली इफेक्ट कर देगा. Here is Mr. Inam, who is here to tell us how much we should be worried about and how much we should not be worried about, in what time frame it can happen. It can happen to many of our installations in Karachi, particularly Manora and particularly Mehran. So we are going to hear something very practical, which is either being done or will be done shortly. Over to you, sir.
Sir, thank you very much for a very nice introduction, and I am extremely grateful to PIMEC and to DG NIMA, and it is indeed a great pleasure to speak in front of Madam Minister about something very serious. My scheme of presentation is as flashed. I'm going to, since Irfan Tariq Saab has already set the theme of that presentation, so I'm definitely going to take advantage of his first presentation, and I'm going to limit myself to the content flashed. One thing which I would like to say to my students, there are two areas where you can immediately see the impact of climate change. One area is the northern areas or the glaciers, and you can see through satellite the melting of glaciers. And the other area which is very important and which is of great concern is the coastal area, because the coast is going to get immediate impact of climate change. And as flashed on the screen, that it is in fact we who are responsible for the emission of greenhouse gases, and because of that emission the temperature of the earth is rising. And if we are unable to control emission as per the Paris Agreement, then may Allah help us. This graph shows the trend, and if you can see that the trend of sea level rise is gradually increasing over the years, and the present state is reflected as it's greater than 4 millimeter per year. And it is, as Irfan Saab has rightly pointed out, that it was rising yesterday and it is going to rise tomorrow. This figure is very interesting. Amjad Saab has briefly mentioned about SSPs, and if you can see on the graph that SSP1 is the state that if we are able to control emission and bring it to almost zero by the end of 2050, then we are going to control lot of bad thing which we have been doing over the years. But if we fail, as Amjad Saab has mentioned, that the worst case scenario is very alarming, that if we failed and if we continue to carry out the routine affairs, and if we keep going the emissions as we presently are, then things are not going to be very comfortable. How vulnerable are Pakistan's coastal area? This is something very interesting, and believe me, most of us have no idea about the sensitivity of that issue. So my intentions are not to harass you, or my intention is just to give a wake-up call to all who matters. Why it is serious? If you see the profile on the left side, this is the profile of Indus Delta, and you can see that over long distances Indus is very flat. So what does that mean? It means that even a minute rise in sea level would intrude into large distances, and this is extremely alarming. And if you can see a topographic map on the right side of the screen, you can see that all the pink shades shown on the delta are already under sea levels. This is very interesting. On the 15th of November 2016, we experienced an event known as supermoon. Supermoon is the event when moon comes closest to the earth, and due to that closeness, it exerts more gravitational pull, and it is written in the text that it pulls about 5 centimeters higher than the normal tide. And if you can see situation of delta a day earlier and during the super moon period, sorry. What Irfan Saab indicated that sea surface temperatures are increasing in our area. Due to the rise in sea surface temperature, it is initiating lot of cyclones in our region. And as Irfan Saab mentioned that we used to hear very seldom about the cyclones, but over the years, every year, it on average 2 or 3 cyclones visit us or visit across the Arabian Sea. This is one of the indication. In 2019 October, it was 28th of October, cyclone 𝐤𝐻 passed through our Arabian Sea. It was far beyond our 𝐒𝐩𝐃, and it was more than 300 kilometers away from the coastline. And the picture on the left side of the screen is Clifton 𝐷HA Golf Club, and you can see it. The cyclone passed more than 300 kilometers, but it flooded the golf club of 𝐷HA. It is because of the low gradient of our coastline. As Amjad Saab mentioned that there are different SSPs, and you can see that if we are managed to control emission by 2050 and bring it to almost zero, then we are going to experience a sea level rise of about 30 centimeters. But if we fail to control it, it can go up to 0.72 meters. In the following slides, what I did, I extracted data from this chart, and if you go, I'm going to show you the website of that chart. That chart was not made by me. It was prepared by IPCC, and they have, if you go to their site, their website, they have uploaded all the data which made that graph possible. This is the state of affair along the Karachi coast, and you can see that according to IPCC and according to NASA prediction, we are going to have a sea level rise of about 60 centimeters by the end of the century. And just imagine the flatness of our coastline and all that incidents that occurred previously. And 60 centimeters, if you add 60 centimeters above the normal tide range, you can imagine what is going to happen. This is the data I extracted from that curve that I showed earlier. And what I did, I calculated year-wise difference or 10 years-wise raise in the sea level, and I added to the tidal range. And you can see that presently it is about 3.6 meters highest astronomical tide, but by the end of the 21st this century, it is going to be as high as 4.2 meters. In this chart, what I did, I have hypothetically at a storm condition where we might have a storm surge as high as 1 meter along Karachi coast, and you can see that the tidal range is going to be more than 5 meters. this figure shows that there are number of serious incidents that can happen to any coast with reference to sea level rise. And it starts from submergence of land till the impeded drainage. And I'm going to show you some of the example from the Karachi coast. You can see on the left, this is 𝐓𝐇𝐄𝐌𝐄, which is almost on the coastline. And on the right, this is Korangi Thermal Power Station. And the proximity of sea and the expected rise of sea level about 5 meters, you can imagine what is going to happen. This is quite common every year during southwest monsoon. This happens along the Hawke's Bay area. Atif, sorry. This is one of the biggest industrial estate of Sindh, and this is site area. And you can see how close this whole industrial complex is situated very close to sea. And the other important area is Lyari River. Lyari River is reportedly bringing about more than 500 million gallons per day of domestic and industrial effluents. And just imagine if Lyari start experiencing extreme sea level and higher tides, and just imagine a scenario where the extreme sea level prevent all the drainage of Lyari and hold all that sewage into the Lyari River, and it would start gaining some flooding. And even during extreme sea level condition or during tides as high as 5 meters, Lyari River can experience backflow. This is Landi Korangi industrial area, and again you can imagine what is going to happen to the industrial area. We have a refinery there, and we also have Mali River, which also can experience backflow. This is the state of affairs, and you can, this is the area under occupied by the elites of Karachi, and you can see the storm water drainage is directly aligned to the sea. And what if the sea rises to that level and that storm drainage start providing some avenues and let the seawater intrude into the area, urban area. This is Sean Circle, Clifton, and nobody has ever thought about the reason why this water remained there for that long. And believe me, one of the main reasons for the water that hold back was the high tide, because this stormy weather coincides with high sea conditions. So this can happen. As I was saying that, just imagine a backflow. Look at my student, she is asking me to wind it up.
She's just doing the right job.
Just imagine a scenario when Liari is going to experience backflow. All this garbage is just waiting for that moment, and in that case, all that trash and all that plastic is going to go towards sea. Atif? This is something very interesting, and if I have tried to relate sea level rise with the challenges of decade of the ocean, as you must be aware of the fact that United Nations has declared the period between 2021 to 2030 as the decade of ocean science for sustainable development. And they have identified 10 different challenges, and you can see all those or most of the challenges are directly related, or they are going to be impacted by the sea level rise. We are going to have lot more issues related to marine pollution. Because of the coastal erosion, we are going to have high turbidity condition, and that is going to impact the biodiversity, and it is also going to damage the fish catch, sustainability of fish resources, and there are many different reasons. But since I am asked to conclude, so let me go through quickly. These are some of the responses we need to take. Some of them, just briefly, there are engineering solutions for almost everything. But can we afford that solution? This is something very important to understand. But these are different options. First option is we don't do anything and let it happen, and you can imagine what is going to happen. We have not yet started any protection work, but countries, some of the countries, they have already experiencing issues related to sea level rise, and they have started securing their assets on the coast. And these are the some of the details of expenditure. And the figure and the estimated cost looks very high, but believe me, it is much cheaper to build something instead of rebuilding something. This is my recommendation, and due to the paucity, I'm now concluding my talk. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you realize that this was a tough subject to talk on, and at the same time has a lot of things which are primarily very successful in giving us the alarm bell and giving us a wake-up call. And those particularly living in the coastal area of Clifton, DHA, and the industrial areas of Korangi and site, etc., definitely there is a need which he very amply highlighted to know it about, and nothing to worry, because the 0.7 meter rise in the ocean will be only after 70 years. We have plenty of time. If we can take those solution as he very amply and rightly highlighted, these are not cost exorbitant, but they are cost effective. And when you take into account the loss which can happen, and I will borrow words of our London speaker earlier, who said this is disaster in the making which is irreversible. Rather, multiple disaster in making which is not reversible. So this is a wake-up call, And this is something which every one of us is affected, because it affects the food chain. In the ultimate analysis, what starts from the warming up of the ocean, the acidification of the ocean, the melting of the glacier and the floods and then cyclone and willies, this eventually will have effect on food chain and security of food. So strategy on the food has to take place priority. I take this opportunity to thank all the worthy speakers. What a pleasure it was to listen to you. So much of learned talk we had, and so much will follow. We have time now for question and answer. Standard, my request to you, please raise your hand, introduce yourself, and then also indicate that the question is targeted at home. So we will be able to do. Please refrain from the remarks, longish remarks. We don't have time. Crispy question will have crispy answers from us. Thank you. Yes.
My name is
Yes,
Mohammad
Rajpur.
Rajpur. I am from the ports and shipping industry. One comment and one question. The comment is that I really feel the speakers were excellent, and these are the hidden treasures of Pakistan. So my compliments to all of them, and especially to NIMA for selecting the topic, and a very important topic, and selecting the right speakers. Question to the Honorable Minister. Given your recent success in Egypt at the COP summit, where you managed to get the West or the developed countries to commit a lot of money to Pakistan, some of the projects highlighted by the last speaker in terms of building breakwaters, retention walls, and protection, in millions or tens of millions of dollars, do you think some of those funds could be diverted for those projects?
She has noted down the question and will be happy and to answer this question while she talks very soon after this. I'm very happy to note that all of you have understood very clearly what was said from here. As in the morning session, 𝐓𝐷 has said, I borrow his words and say the same thing. Before I conclude, I really been here for last 1.5 days. Just 2 sentences which may not be relevant to particularly this session. I borrow words of Mr. Senator Moshahid Hussain with full agreement and heart out. Center of gravity of Pakistan has to shift from land to sea. And the second quote I would like to borrow from Professor Zafar, who said in the morning session, Pakistan is not an agriculture country, but a maritime country. Thank you very much, all of you, sir. It has been a pleasure. And now may I request the chief guest, Senator Cherry Rehman, Minister of Climate Change, to kindly say a few words and conclude this session.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, let me thank Vice Admiral Ahmed Saeed, retired Director General NIMA, and Commodore Ubaidullah, distinguished speakers at the Presidium, Excellencies, friends and colleagues, as well as members of the international community, maritime community, and the navies that are present here. I believe 50 countries are participating in this very impressive conference, or rather convening. And we have before us a situation where the navies of the world are committed not just to waging conflict or creating boundaries for territorial protection, but are actually advancing the cause of peace. So to the Aman Initiative, my extreme compliments. This is the second time I've done this, and I'm always heartened in the future of humanity when I see militaries, and specifically the navies, of so many countries that are often at odds with each other, come together to work together to protect our seas from contraband, from piracy and other predations. So my compliments to all in the spirit of working together. That collaboration, ladies and gentlemen, is the only future for mankind and womankind, of course. But it is the only future because, not because I'm the climate minister, but because I see climate threats and risks as the primary shock and danger to human and national security as we know it. There are traditional threats that I'm sure have been discussed, but this is classified climate change as a non-traditional threat, as you know. Yet it is becoming the most pressing concern of the 21st century. You saw excellent speakers making scholarly projections, science-based projections into the future of what are known as slow onset events. Now, they are classified and rated in climate science to the end of the century. The Paris Accord also talks about that, keeping 1.5 alive, the goal of keeping 1.5 alive. Well, let me just ring an alarm bell here, and I'm not going to apologize for it because those who take action do so based on verifiable knowledge and information that can actually trigger serious responses. Now, we are still, as a human race, responding to climate change. We are not ahead of the curve at all. We are only responding. Now, militaries know what only responding and proactivity means, don't you? You all know that. Scientists should also know that. And I feel now it is high time that all our communities understood that. We are responding, but we are not responding at all, by far, to be able to save what is left of our planet, what is left of the terra firma, and principally the oceans of the world. Now, I haven't started with Pakistan. It is my principal focus, of course, and I will end with that. But I want to start with one thing. Pakistan this year, in 2022, experienced the worst flood, a monsoon on steroids, as the UN Secretary General called it, the worst flooding of the century. Even Pakistanis did not understand that that was the case. The level, the scale, the magnitude we had of this disaster, of this catastrophe, impacted 33 million people. Now, 33 million people is the combined size of populations of 3 medium-sized European countries. 3 countries together. If you can imagine the scale, that is the context. And when I speak about scale, I say it to remind everybody that climate change is real, it is coming at us now, and it will not keep to the timescales and projections we are talking about. Remember these words. It is a dangerous decade, not the end of the century. That will be too late for countries on the ground zero and on the front line of global warming. As 2022 showed us, we in Pakistan and many other countries close to the equator and various other currents that comprise how storms impact each country, or droughts and floods, that is a classic indicator of climate change. And Pakistan experienced all of them in 2022. It started with 4 heat waves. We went into 53.7 degrees in parts of southern Sindh. Now, that's not a temperature known. That is not a temperature at which marine life or even human life can prosper. Okay? That is what is known as real impacts of global warming on the ground here and now. So this is a dangerous decade for us because it is an accelerated decade of global warming. We are going to experience it disproportionately. The vulnerable countries, the Horn of Africa, small islands which are already sinking, the Maldives, for instance, will sink in 8 years, according to their climate minister. I would be very angry if I was her, and the whole world would have heard about it by now. But they need to hear about the fact that sea level is much higher. Today's yesterday's reports, and this is the thing about climate change, the reports coming fast and fresh and informing us of this accelerated pace of change are much faster than what we saw. Sea level will be rising faster than what we saw. Why? Because we are not on the 1.5 trajectory that Paris promised us, or we promised ourselves. Now, we are at the rate we are going, the trajectory we are going, anywhere close to 2.8 degrees at the turn of the century, or even 3 degrees. By then, we in the front line, the ground zero experiencers of vulnerable countries will have felt the burn much faster. So understand this, climate impacts are not even all over the world. The colder climates, the prepared climates, countries will experience it with far more resilience. They will be prepared, but their temperatures will not be so furious as the ones we experience today. Now, we were the hottest place on the face of this planet in 2022. People don't realize we were also the hottest place on the planet last year and the year before that, in Turbat, in Jacobabad, and Dadu. This is the southern belt of the country, the delta regions that we were hearing so much about. This is where the human impact of climate change is being experienced in people's fields, in their kitchens, in their homes, in the cost of living crisis you hear about so much because of conflict in Europe. That is where the real cost of living crisis is coming. When your home, when your crops are burnt, when you're no longer able to cook, or you have no water to access, then the cost of living is very close to subsistence, and subsistence often becomes a luxury when you are hit by the kind of storms that threaten your very survival. Now, this is what Pakistan experienced. We experienced at the same time a monsoon that was on steroids, non-stop for 6 weeks, unheard of in South Asia. We all know what a monsoon is like. We saw regular torrential flooding, and we saw glacial lake outburst events, which are known as GLOFs. And today, as we speak, my ministry and UNDP are training at least 24 sites or more in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Gilgit-Baltistan to plan for early onset GLOFs, because last year we experienced 300% rise in GLOFs. Again, glacial lake outburst floods happen because the glaciers are melting. We have the highest amount of glaciers outside the polar region, the highest number in Pakistan. They're excellent for tourism, but they're still not looking at ecotourism. So those are also in the front line. And when 3 types of flooding combines, the momentum is absolutely life-threatening to communities that are under sea level. Now, many areas from Tata, Sajawal, all those areas, even Karachi, parts of it are under sea level, already under sea level. So that is why, other than governance, the architecture of coping with storm drains and managing a new kind of flooding is extremely important. And it requires, this is called adaptation. It requires, adaptation is no inexpensive business. It requires a great deal of money, and it requires time. Do we have time? Many countries do not, many communities. Within each country, climate change will be experienced inequally. Women and children and coastal and poor, and the poor at the margins will experience it like hell on wheels. The cities with more preparedness, with walls of concrete will have more, obviously, will be more resilient. But eventually, like 40 degrees came to Europe this summer, it will come to everyone. So my theme at COP27 was, what goes on in Pakistan will not stay in Pakistan, because every ecosystem, especially through the oceans, is completely connected. It is completely connected and it cannot be separate. If one ecosystem fails, if there is a dead zone, there are 400 dead zones in the world's oceans today, and that is because of lack of oxygen within the ocean, then those dead zones will come to you too. And once those dead zones come to you, or the Gulf Stream, the historic Gulf Stream, which from ancient times has been regulating planetary seasons, starts slowing down. It's called the conveyor belt. The Gulf Stream is called the conveyor belt. The ocean is a conveyor belt for streams that then regulate your seasons. Once those start slowing down, let alone marine life, then you will have a real crisis, and many countries will wake up and ask, oh, what are we supposed to do about it? Well, the science is right there, and it's telling you what to do. It's telling you to stop consuming the way we used to, which will bring me to my favorite theme, microplastics, and how that is choking all our oceans. This year, 2021, last year, we had 139 million metric tons, not Pakistan, the whole world, of microplastics choking the ocean. All of marine life is now ingesting it. It is landing up in your dinner plates now. It is. And what is happening is a cycle called a tipping point. And a tipping point is being reached in the ocean. People are all talking about how there will be more plastics in the sea than fish. That's not at the end of the century. That is 2050. So 2050 is when your children will still be alive. And for us, the choking of the ocean, the warming of the ocean, I'll just say in plain words, this business of acidification. What is this? It arises because the ocean is warming, and 90% of the planet is controlled. The seasons, the tides, 1/5 of protein that we eat is controlled by the ocean. But most dangerously, and people don't realize, this is why I say what goes on in one ecosystem will go into the other. The most dangerous thing is the melting Arctic and the melting glaciers. Because once the Arctic is no longer ice, and today's reports tell us it won't be, then the jet stream that reflects sunlight back to the sun, all that ice reflects sunlight back to the sun. And our oceans have been absorbing 90% of our own emissions, the sun's warming, our global warming, for the last 50 years. For the last 50 years, it is our oceans that have been the carbon sinks. History, civilizations have used oceans for conquests and for commerce. But now, the most valid and important metric of judging what the ocean does is its ability to be a carbon sink. And right now, its health as a carbon sink, its sustainability as a carbon sink, its operation as the vector of a blue economy that can make commerce sustainable, is under severe shock and threat. So we can have conferences, we can talk about this, because without talking about it, there is no knowledge dispersion. Without no knowledge dispersion, there is no action. But action has to be real, and it has to mean something, and it must start from the top. Why do I say this? Because those who are empowered are always better prepared, better resilient, have resources. So it's incumbent on all of us in this room to start at the top. There should be no more plastic bottles here. We can afford glass bottles, it's cumbersome, but entire generations used to do it in the 70s. I'm 62 years old, I remember how to drink out of non-plastic bottles. So we will all have to remember how to do that. My office is not allowed to use it, neither is the Senate, none of its committees. None of my offices. Very soon, the government of Pakistan will also not. It is very hard to regulate plastics. The recycling industry is telling you that they're recycling 30% of it. I do not believe them for 1 minute, because it is less than 10%. The world is recycling less than 10%. And I mentioned the 139 million metric tons figure because it is growing higher and higher every year. And it is virgin polymer, virgin plastics, not recycled, not anything but single-use plastic. Know your enemy. If there was an extinction event and somebody landed from Mars, like there was during the dinosaur age, and we are facing an extinction event, it's slow and we don't realize it, but all they would see as a legacy of human civilization is plastics. They would see plastics choking our oceans, our waterways, our landfills, our homes, our terrain, and of course, destroying our sea. The sea is the origin of much life. And it is the ground, it is the mother of all finite resources. We continue to think, the human race continues to think that these resources are infinite. They are not. Our population is rising and we are exploiting our Earth's and our ocean's resources with impunity. It is with great impunity, and then do not be surprised when the storms start recurring with increasing velocity and with greater and greater frequency. It's happening everywhere in the world now. So we do need to focus our minds on what we are doing here and now. We need to take action when we go home, because climate change is about action at the individual level, at the institutional level, at business platforms, at multiple international platforms, and of course national governments. But nowhere in the world can climate change be forced into regulation. It is the ultimate stakeholder thing. It's got to be accepted, because no one can patrol and police what you do in your backyard, how much water you throw away. And I'm saying water because we've gotten diverted by climate emergencies, but water is Pakistan's frontline emergency. When I swore in as minister, the first thing I wanted to do was alert everybody to the fact that Pakistan will be water scarce by 2025. You'll say, but there's water everywhere. There won't be a drop to drink. That water will not be fit for drinking. It is the outfall of drainage and monsoons, and it is a disease vector, as we know. There are great lakes in Sindh which may never go away after this monsoon. So, before the summer strikes us again, and I go back to the Margalas and the KPs starting what is known as the forest fire burn season. There's a burn season that all forests now have to live with all over the world, from Oregon to California to Turkey, everywhere. And we either understand that this is because of human activity, or we turn our face away and say, all right, we don't know what to do. Well, let me tell you what countries like Pakistan have to do, and navies like yourselves have to do. They have to invest in peace like they are doing today, because war is a high emission event, and emissions produce global warming. Not the sun on its own, not nature on its own. Emissions, human emissions, produce global warming. And war is a very big emitter, and it is the only thing that has not been calculated by any industry. Every other human activity is under a calculus for its emissions, but war is not. So, when a navy invests in peace, it is investing in decarbonization, because normal sea commerce is one of the lowest emitters. It's 3 to 4%. It's like Africa, okay? So Africa is a low emitter. Pakistan is the lowest emitter. We are not responsible for global warming. For once, we are not responsible for it, but we are in its front line. So what do? We can't change, we can't stop other countries or big corporations from emissions. we start to change our own lifestyles, and we start focusing on adaptation. Adaptation is a society's ability to adapt with resilience to the onset of changing weather, changing cycles, and shocks that the country will experience. So we are facing our most formidable economic challenge since in 75 years. And we all know we need to diversify economy. So why aren't we looking at the blue economy as a real opportunity? Challenges to living societies, to regenerative civilizations present opportunities. Use every crisis for an opportunity. Again, militaries know how to do that. So do regenerative societies. Either they become extinct or they carry on. So in our decisive decade, what are we doing? You heard about, we're in Karachi, you heard about the ability of mangroves, for instance, to absorb carbon, right? Now, our mangroves are absorbing carbon at a very high rate, much higher than a normal boreal forest. It has gone up by 300%. Everyone has collaborated, the Navy, the private sector, the government of Sindh, IUCN, World Wildlife. It is a perfect example. It's the other side of the perfect storm. It is a perfect example of how it's providing green jobs and how a community and coastal belt is regenerating. Even the marine life is regenerating. And here, people don't know, but Pakistan is already trading on the voluntary carbon markets. So that blue carbon is trading on voluntary carbon markets. The gentleman here was presenting. I wanted to inform him. We are already doing that. The government of Sindh is already trading, and it is set to look at a future, I think, for the next 60 years, it has shifted towards this green renewability. And obviously, it is being able to monetize its carbon ahead of any other province or green resource. So the seagrass and the mangroves are being monetized now in the Indus Delta Blue Project. I welcome you to come and have a look at it. I'm sure IUCN is part of it. They do know about it. Now, according to the World Bank, the potential to increase Pakistan's maritime revenue is over $2 billion per annum. And, you know, obviously that has a cascade of effects on livelihoods. But there are no investments in serious containerized shipping also, because half of our foreign freight carriers are being given charges. There are no investments, serious investments in ecotourism, and there are no serious investments in, other than those being taken by provincial governments and central government, there are no serious investments in aquaculture. There has to be now a movement towards that, because without it, we will not be able to generate the protein needed or even the trade needed for our coastal communities. Now, I could go on and on, but I think I want to just speak to you about the triple planetary crisis and how it's impacting us. My job here is not to come and tell you what my ministry is doing and how wonderfully it's performing. Climate change is not understood by the whole of South Asia as a clear and present danger. Half my job has been to present to our own country that it is a clear and present danger. In fact, it's upon us. So people ask, oh, but why is this happening? It's happening because we were not listening. Now, we at COP27, the reason we were internationally able to make a case is because just before going there, I told the cabinet that we are less than 1% of an emitter. We are a clear target of climate injustice. And while my remit is not local action, it is not local action, it is not provincial action either. It is mostly to deal with international treaties. We have to get this. The loss and damage fund was yes, no, yes, no. I mean, ask any woman. Nobody is going to give you anything without a fight for it. So if we were expecting it to be handed over, it's not going to happen. And so it had to be a fight. We had to have critical mass. The entire region was with us. the people who are rivals and competitors saw the value night after night in conferencing, in informal caucusing, that we must stay together. The minute we are together, the whole game changes. And that's what happened here. It was, of course, exemplary leadership by all of Pakistan's leaders. The Foreign Minister, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, understood it immediately. He mobilized the being put on the agenda. The Prime Minister understood it. He showed up at COP, although he was like, I have things to do here. I said, no, sir, you have to come here and you have to make the speech. And the same was done at the United Nations General Assembly. So, yes, when we want to, we can pull it together. We had the opportunity. We were chair of G77. It's a rotating chair, and we identified it as an opportunity, and we took it. We took the conference into 2 extra days, into 18-hour nights. We just stayed on, one person from each country, and just stayed on. I made the whole region change their flights. They did. I won't take the names of the countries. Some are clear rivals. But they all changed their flights. They all, those climate ministers saw the point. And they made it happen. Now, the Loss and Damage Fund is like the Adaptation Fund and the other fund of $100 billion created 10 years ago. Do not expect money from it. I wrote in an article before going to COP, it was published widely, that it's not some pot of gold. The COP27 is not a fundraising forum. But given what we experienced in Pakistan, it was very much our right to take all, with our development partners, to go to Geneva, to the climate resilience. We did a roadshow there called the Climate Resilience Conference. And everybody told us, you won't even get the $4 billion you're asking for. I said 50% Pakistan will give, 50% we want out of the 16 billion projected for rebuilding, only flood rebuilding. Then we took it there and we raised more. We got 9 billion from the international community. So it's a question of how you come together and how you advocate at the right forum for the right challenge to be overcome. And lastly, I'm just going to finish. I do want to tell you that just before this flooding happened, I think it was my 3rd month in the government, we had identified what is known as the Living Indus Initiative, and we pitched it at Geneva also. It is the largest coastal initiative, river initiative, and groundwater initiative in many parts of this world right now. It ranges from $11 billion to $17 billion, and it has a living menu of 25 interventions where communities, countries, investors, private investors, as well as MDBs and bilateral donors, anybody can actually invest. So 15 of those are flood resilience interventions. For instance, one intervention is about just dealing with agriculture. One is about community-based ponds. The other is plastic-free cities along the Indus, because as you know, the Indus is the jugular vein of the country. It runs from each province right down to the delta, and it supports 90% of our livelihoods, not just agriculture now, directly or indirectly. And the good news is Pakistan has the largest man-made irrigation system in the world, in the Punjab, and it has, some of it has been replicated in the plains of Sindh. But since topography is entirely different, it's almost saline now, it's under stress and trauma by the flooding, by the triple flood, and it needs a break. 8 million people are still impacted. 8 million is a huge number. Our cities don't even know about this. And they're living there, hand to mouth, with their futures wiped out. So the Living Indus came at the right time, but it got swamped out by, of course, the needs of the Great Flood. And there is a fiscal constraint. The Living Indus will pitch at Davos also. It is getting a lot of responses, but there is only so much climate finance to go around, or even development finance, because now development is linked to climate. And so another time I'll be happy to give you a presentation on the entire Living Indus. It is what I call the axis of adaptation for Pakistan. It presents an opportunity, it has a framework, and it involves communities as well as international and private donors. So that's the framework for adaptation. It's all drawn up. It is now going to be projectized with a grant from the UN Environment Agency, where I'm elected vice president. So we will take it forward, inshallah. But what I would urge everybody to do is to look at your own lifestyles. If we don't do that, all this will be meaningless. Go home, look at your lifestyle, go home and go to your office and look at what you consume, because we are overusing our resources, including the water. These actions have to be taken now, and they have to be taken by all of us. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for the souvenir presentation ceremony. I would like to request our Honorable Chief Guest, Senator Shahri Rehman, to acknowledge the esteemed speakers by presenting them with the conference souvenirs. Director General NIMA, Vice Admiral Retired 𝐓𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸 𝐒𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸𝐻𝐸 is also requested to join her for the souvenir presentation ceremony.